Hi everyone, I'm Lazy Cat Lady. This is going to be the first video for my new channel. The channel is going to focus on playing my favorite archetype, well, my favorite deck ever in Modern, which is Sultai Time Sieve with the Asmo shell. So for this first video, I'm just going to do a deck tech, just go over the deck, the card choices, and some of the differences from other similar archetypes and shells. And this archetype isn't necessarily ideal. This is just my favorite way to play it. So yeah, let's just jump into it. Um, as you'll see, a chunk of the deck, because it's an Asmo shell, is really already determined for you. For Asmo, for Cookbook, um, for Oval Chase, and then of course the Urza Sagas as a part of the mana base. That's all pretty standard. Um, Time Sieve Shell, so we have Academy Manufactor to generate the necessary artifacts to combo off. I only play 3 Time Sieves at the moment. I'll get to why in a little bit. Um, you can play this shell with lots of different color combinations. The reason why I like to play green is for Gilded Goose. It's nice to have extra food generators. The deck is also really mana hungry, so getting that extra mana is also really important. Um, Triggers when it enters, so it's really great with Academy Manufactor when it comes into play, and then it can create more foods later on in the game. So sometimes you can even combo without ever seeing an Underworld Cookbook. Underworld Cookbook, of course, probably the most powerful card in the deck, so that's going to be the key component. The other green pieces are going to be Sarenth Steel Seeker in the main deck. This card is so good in this archetype. I can't tell you how many times I've had it in play at the same time as an Academy Manufactor, and you just see so many cards. And Sarenth Steel Seeker is the reason why I don't play the 4th Time Sieve. It is just incredibly easy to find Time Sieve when you need it with these cards. The rest of the reason why I play green is in the sideboard. The Haywire Mites specifically are just, they handle the One Ring in the current meta, they handle Urza's Saga. A lot of the really prime removal in the format at the moment is enchantment based, like Leyline Binding. So you can handle stuff like that in the late game. It's great against Hammer Time. It's just an all-star. Um, so that's the reason for green. So let's get back to the main deck. The other cards that won't necessarily you see in every archetype are the Blood Fountains and the Deadly Disputes. Now, Deadly Dispute is really nice. This archetype often, except for Sarenth Steelseeker for the most part, doesn't have a lot of ways to gain card advantage. Um, Deadly Dispute synergizes with almost the entire deck. You can sack extra foods from Goose and Cookbook. You can sack Goose. You can sack either part of Blood Fountain, the token, or the actual permanent. You can sacrifice things in response to removal. It's just so good. The treasure, if you have one or more Academy Manufactors in play, it's also generating you additional value beyond the treasure. So that card is super important. It's also nice to have a couple instant speed spells in a deck that is primarily sorcery speed. Great against control, great against anything that is holding up their mana to interact with your spells. You can just wait till their turn. Blood Fountain. I don't see a lot of people playing this card. I think it makes so much sense in a Time Sieve shell. Generates 2 artifacts. Sometimes Blood Fountain just lets you take a turn early with a Time Sieve without ever seeing a Manufactor. The Blood token can generate you card advantage value in the late game with your Oval Chases. It also lets you cast Asmo because of the discard effect. And then, especially against control and other long, grindy matchups, being able to get 2 of your creatures back is just, sometimes you can just end step, Blood Fountain, get back, Manufactor, Asmo, win the game on the spot. So it's good early, especially sacking for Deadly Dispute, and it's good late game. So that card is incredibly powerful, I think, in this archetype. I used to play 4 at the moment because of the ubiquitous power of the One Ring. I've done a 2-2 split. So Apart from that, it's a pretty standard construction of the main deck, I think. I kind of follow Aspiring Spike's philosophy in that you want a deck to just be as consistent as possible, so I try to play as many 4-ofs of all the most powerful cards, just so that you see the cards you want to as much as often. I probably won't spend too much time on the mana base. It's, it's fairly standard. I like to play one Boseiju to have outs to those enchantment artifact hate that a lot of decks will have in the main deck. And I also really like having an Urborg. It can be bad, game 1 against coffers, you don't really want to play it. But apart from that, it can save you a lot of life in the late game, and it turns all your extra fetches just, you don't have to spend the extra life on them, especially against Burn and other aggressive decks. So let's move on to the sideboard. The one thing I might change moving forward is one of these Haywire Mites may eventually become a second Pithing Needle. Mite is good against the One Ring, but Needle can just, stop it cold, and is better against Yawgmoth, which this deck can struggle against sometimes. But mainly this deck is a combo deck, so Haywire Mite, I like to play a 3-1 split with Tear Asunder. The Artifact Enchantment removal, you need it. Every game 2 against most decks, they're going to bring in Leyline of the Void. They're going to bring in a lot of Artifact Enchantment hate for Graveyard, or Pithing Needle to turn off Cookbook, which is a very strong play if you don't have an answer for it. I like to play the one Tear Asunder. All of these are exile based because you got to be able to deal with Kaldra. You got to be able to deal with the One Ring. I like the Tear Asunder since it can be kicked and hit non-land permanents. That means you can bring this in against Karn decks, and also you often want an artifact enchantment removal piece against Murktide. This can hit a Murktide, which sometimes the deck struggles against. It can take a Karn off the board. So I like to have this since it's super flexible. And is the same amount of mana investment for exiling an artifact or enchantment as a Haywire Mite. So I think it's a good choice. Struggle against Karn, of course, Bone Shards, but the discard can... I've played with 2 Bone Shards in the sideboard, and it just... Sometimes you just don't have the cards to discard, so I like to play a split. Bone Shards, Fatal Push, you gotta deal with Ragavans. Those can really just run away with the game. I've found that Unmoored Egos are really great. You bring them in against Creativity, bring them in against Tron, Yawgmoth, Creativity... I think I already said Creativity. Bring them in against any of the Cascade decks. I like to have 2 copies. The rest of the stuff is I have my 1 hate piece for Mill, Damping Spheres for Storm or big mana decks, and then Pithing Needle for Planeswalkers. The Pithing Needle's just there's too many things you could talk about with Pithing Needle, and then split of Soul Guide and Nile Spellbomb for the graveyard matchups. Companion Yugantha, love having Yugantha as the companion. Sometimes you just need an extra card to discard to an Underworld Cookbook. Just get an extra card for 3 mana. You can cast it through Blood Moon. It can help you cast your other spells through a Blood Moon. 5/5 is just matches up pretty well to block. Can trade with a Fury. It's just a really great card. Having it every game, I think, is just so important in this deck. So that's the deck construction. If the One Ring gets banned, obviously that'll leave the deck, but having Time Sieves and Deadly Disputes at your disposal just means you can get rid of the One Ring whenever you need to, so you don't need to worry about dying to the life loss. You also have food tokens if it needs to stick around for a couple extra turns, and the One Ring fills in another card advantage slot, which I said this deck struggles with. So now you got 4 Deadly Dispute, 4 Saren Steelseeker, 2 One Ring. I think that really ties the deck together really well. I think this deck is so much fun. Alright, so this has been the Deck Tech. You can also see the primer that I wrote. I go into a lot more specifics about individual cards, why I chose them, and also individual matchups. So next up I'll be running some leagues with this and doing commentary while I go through it. So yeah, I'm excited to make some more videos and hopefully get some more people to join our Discord and uh, realize the beauty that is Academy Manufactor. So, alright, see you in the next video.